In this video, we're going to talk about the subtotal function, and that returns a subtotal of filtered data. And very often I use this thing with tables because we just talked about slicers. We're going to filter our data with slicers, and I want a function that reflects the answers based on the filtered data. So the subtotal function can average, count A, max, min. It has all of these different functions built into this one function, and it's all based on the very first parameters. Which number are we going to put in there? And we'll demonstrate this in just a second. There's this obtuse notion where if you put in a 1, it's going to include hidden data if you were to hide rows, which I never recommend. And if you put 101, it's going to ignore hidden data. Again, we don't really deal with that very much, but that's what that's about. Let's demonstrate this function next to a table. It's our employee table. And we'll filter the data just to shrink it up a little bit so that we're only looking at Boston. If I can click right. And within Boston, we'll only look at a particular department. Let's take a look at the accounting department. Okay, so right below all of the data right here, I'm going to put the sum function, and then we'll put two subtotal functions. Okay. So here's what the sum function does. I'm going to sum, and we've done this plenty of times, where I name the table empty, square bracket, we're going to sum the base salary column. No problem. So that sums all of the data. It doesn't care if it's filtered or not. What the subtotal function does, I'll go subtotal, is it asks for a parameter. Am I taking an average, count A, max, min, product, all of these different things, and in this case we're summing. So the first thing you have to put is a 9 because we want to sum, comma, and then it goes, well, what am I summing? And so you simply type what we typed before, which is the empty, the name of the table, and then base salary is the column that I want to sum. So notice this number is different than that number because the data is filtered. I'm going to go ahead and grab my format painter and paint these the same. So 33 million is every employee, 975,000 is the accounting department in Boston. So now let's take a look at this subtotal parenthesis. Remember 9 was if we include hidden rows and 109 is if we don't include them. Well, the reality is when your data is filtered, base salary, it doesn't matter. Whether it's 9 or 109, it's a moot point. The only time that matters is if your data is not filtered. So these two numbers will be exactly the same. Watch this. I'm going to hide this row, 465, hide. And the numbers change, but they're the same number, right? It's only showing me the information that's visible. If I unhide that guy, Control Z, the number changed, but they're the same number. Again, it's showing me the data that's visible. The only time this hidden thing matters, let's clear this filter from the department. Now we'll scroll to the very end of the data. The data is not filtered. Why do we not have the same number? Oh, it is still filtered. What else are we filtered on? Oh, the office. Clear the filter from that also. Okay, so now the data is not filtered, so the sum function has the same value as the subtotal because the subtotal is giving me the sum of all the visible data. Now let's hide a row. We'll do 537, hide. And then all of a sudden this one with the 9 as the number has a different number than this one with the 109. It only works when the data is not filtered. It doesn't really matter for this class whether you put 9 or 109. It just doesn't matter. So one more time, let's go ahead and do a different kind of filter. Let's take a couple people, Aaron and Adair, and then right here, we end up with 170,800. If we add a third person, all of a sudden now we're at 203. Again, it gives me an answer to the unfiltered data, or the things that we can see. So how is this subtotal function used? Let's clear the filter. They're really handy on a dashboard type report where you have slicers that your user can use to filter the data. And over here in the summary table, we can use the subtotal that will reflect the answer based on the filters that your users selected. So for instance, I want to maybe count how many employees I have. I will use the subtotal function because I maybe only want to see the number of employees in Boston or the number of employees in accounting. So I'm going to subtotal, but this time I want to count. Well, what number is the count function? It is 2, comma, and what table am I counting? The employee table. And what column? If I want to count the number of employees, I could just use the ID column. So now when I hit enter, I get 0. So what's my problem? The ID column has text. It's not numeric. What function did I just grab? I grabbed the count function right here, right? Let me back up a little bit. So remember, you have count and count A. Count counts numbers, count A counts text. So I should have chosen 3 because the ID column is a text column. It's not a numeric column. Now all of a sudden we have 534 employees. How many employees do we have at Boston? If I click on this, the data becomes filtered and it's 105, and recognize the table does filter behind the scenes. That's the beauty of those table slicers, is you can move them onto another sheet and the table will go ahead and filter itself behind the scenes. So now if I want to go Boston accounting, that's 15 employees. So now let's go and add up all of our wages. And in this example, let's just reflect it, or use the base salary column as the wage column. So I want to get a total base salary. So I'm going to equal subtotal. And we want to get the total. We're going to sum, which is the number 9 is the function for summing, comma, and it's the employee table base salary square bracket. So that will give me the total wages of, right now, accounting and Boston. And I have to close up the subtotal function, enter. What if I want to get the average of the base salary? So I'm going to go equal subtotal again. If I could type equal subtotal. And what's the average? Average looks to be a 1, comma. And the employee table, square bracket, and our base salary again, square bracket. We'll hit enter on that. So that is the average wage for Boston accounting. And finally, what's the min and the max? You start to get the idea. Subtotal. What's the min function? 5, comma, and then the employee table and the base salary one more time. We'll close that up, and we can actually copy this formula down. We'll get the same answer, but how quick is it to run over to this function? And let's see, if we go backspace, we can now get the max, which is 4 is the max function. So here's the largest salary, the minimum, the average, total wages, and the number of employees for that department. If I clear these filters, this is for across our entire company, but then of course I can choose just San Francisco. That would be that particular office, or the San Francisco R&D, 19 employees, and those are the numbers. So it's a great, the subtotal function is great on dashboards for allowing your user to filter the data, and these formulas or functions will automatically give you an answer based on that filtered data.